began one morning in Belgrade with the discovery of an invitation in the out tray of a fax machine, and resulted in a journey that would take us across the globe for an audience with the mystical God King of the Tibetan people, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, now resident for the past 30 years at the Himalayan stronghold of Dharamsala, northern India. 4 times over the past year, I had attempted without luck to obtain one of the rarely granted audiences with this man whose title literally translated means Ocean of Wisdom. But now, in receipt of a personal invitation, luck appeared to be on my side. In hindsight, I often wondered how I got myself caught up here in this city called Belgrade, and in a country in which I had a hard enough time understanding the language, let alone understanding the road signs. Caught up not only physically, but emotionally, with the people with whom I'd watched the whole world unanimously turn their backs upon and point a blaming finger at. As one of the prime protagonists, one of the most disturbing and most publicized conflicts to rock Europe since the end of the Second World War. The trouble is, when you point a finger, always 3 fingers point back at yourself. And so for me, the acute problems in the Balkans were simply microscopic to a greater macrocosmic global one. As the date to the scheduled appointment in India began to draw closer, I found myself becoming increasingly more and more curious as to the wisdom this particular ocean might impart under the circumstances. Originally, I was invited out to work on one of the only English radio stations in Belgrade, but as the war worsened and international sanctions reaped their merciless toll upon every level of Serbian society, I began to feel that radio rhetoric and disc spinning somewhat inept when contrasted against the dramatic plight of the situation at hand. Purely in response to finding oneself within this context, it seemed a next logical step to initiate and record a series of radio peace appeals based upon my past journalistic work and contacts with high-profile humanitarians and celebrities. Those were then subsequently broadcast across the entire country and the former Yugoslavia. The sympathy and admiration that countless statesmen, world leaders, and celebrated stars openly hold for the Dalai Lama and his Tibetan nation throughout their long, hard struggle in exile. Stars like Richard Gere, Harry Dean Stanton, Cindy Crawford, Diane Ladd, Olympia Dukakis, just to name a few, coupled together with the fact that His Holiness had been awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1989, encouraged me to believe that there might be some very real benefit in attempting to bridge his philosophy with that of the current social political circumstances now in operation in the Balkans. In similar respect, the world community had also shunned the plight of the Tibetan people, who as a result, to quote the Dalai Lama, now actually faced the very real threat of extinction. Here for me lay the link between these two nations and the factor that was pivotal behind the interview. For in Serbia, the war and a world embargo had resulted in creating deeply entrenched feelings of helplessness and intense human frustration, along with all the classical accompanying hallmarks of rising nationalism and a strong right-wing movement. Tenzin Gyatso was born in a cowshed in 1935 to a family of farming peasants in eastern Tibet, and was recognized by a search party of eminent lamas at the age of 2 as the absolute spiritual ruler of Tibet, a living incarnation of the Buddha, and the 14th Dalai Lama in a line that stretches back 597 years. Following the Chinese invasion and occupation of Tibet in 1950 and the subsequent suppressed nationalist uprising against the Chinese invaders in 1959, the Dalai Lama, on the back of a yak, along with 100,000 Tibetan refugees, fled across some of the highest mountains in the world to India and some of the other neighboring countries, where he formed his Tibetan government in exile. Since then, he has become a leading world symbol of peace and an international spokesman for the cause of non-violent social change. Awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1989, I was anxious to finally have the opportunity to meet with this enigmatic figure. Our international flight touched down in New Delhi, India's capital, and from there it was a 10-hour bone-shaking coach trip up into the foothills of India's northern regions. In India, the drivers are all mad, and ours was no exception. Throughout the entire journey, he seemed permanently to be teetering on the verge of some terrifying accident. Likewise, India at first sight appears to be a deeply mysterious, exotic land where virtues like wisdom, worship, and peace are extolled everywhere, until that is, one looks a little closer. And then there appears, not surprisingly enough, the very same civil unrest and dissent and divisions that cancerously eats away inside of every one of man's totalitarian structures. As my partner and I wandered down Dharamsala's dusty streets, past groups of chanting monks, browsing cattle and steaming chai stalls on our way to the appointed interview, the one question that I, as a mere mortal, would like to ask God himself if ever I got the chance, and under the circumstances this reincarnation of the Buddha seemed as close as I was going to get, would be, could a state of permanent peace ever truly exist for human beings? Or is that just a fanciful idea held within stories and mythology?
Although conflict and bloodshed, almost like what's it, a part of human history. Now today, the world actually is a world new situation. I mean, they heavily dependent on one another. Not only nation to nation, but also continent to continent, is heavily dependent on one another. And also the communication. Now, so what happened at the other side of the globe, you see, bring in your own home. So is it that due to this factor, there is possibility, you see, to promote the sense of one world, spirit of one world, the one humanity. This is a different language, is a different race, is a different customs or different ideology, different religious faith. You see, these, in the term of humanity, then these are secondary. So I think there is possibility, you see, to promote the genuine harmony among the humanity. And also, you see, now you see this, the reality of interaction or heavily depend on one another. That is reality. We cannot avoid. You see, even you don't like, you see, your neighbor. Your future, your interest much depend on your neighbor. That's reality. Even you want, you see, you isolate, or even you want to be really, you see, independent. But in reality, how can you survive without your neighbor? So that's reality. So therefore, if we try to, I mean, some kind of independence or some kind of isolated, without any botheration about your neighbor, you cannot survive. So you see, since you see they heavily dependent, heavily interacted, interdependent situation. So even you don't want, you see, we have to accept that reality. So the only alternative is live together harmoniously. And you see these different, different things. We should take these differences as a minor. So even you see one big family. Say, I think even you see husband and wife, and even you see two children. You cannot expect all four persons should have the same feeling or same view, the same sort of conduct. It's impossible. You see, each human being, you see, there is a different mental disposition. Accordingly, you see, someone you see like this, someone you see like other. So so you see they accept or recognize, you see that fact. Then you see no need to quarrel. You can live very happily with, you see, each person's, you see, different different taste or different thinking, different ideology. So I think the humanity as a whole, we have to treat as just one family, and let them each, you see, whatever they like, you see, this ideology or this feeling or this religion, doesn't matter. Let them have, you see, the different thing, which more suitable, which more, useful or yes, helpful, and then these minor differences should not be a causing for divide humanity or one human community.
It was March the 9th, 1991, and I remember watching a news item on my TV in London showing government tanks rolling into Belgrade's Republic Square. And as I sat there, never for a moment imagining that I would be actually spending the next few years of my life living in that very same city.
The tragically true words of the late Dr. Martin Luther King came to mind, that mankind hasn't yet learned to disagree without becoming violently disagreeable. What is it, I wonder, that in spite of a communication system and a technology bringing this world even closer together, what is it that is now tearing us so far apart? And why is it that the bottom line to dissension is almost inevitably violence?
Now the problem is when our mind is calm or normal, then we can think, you see, these reasons or logics on the basis of reality. But I think the very same person, for example, you see, both of us, if two of us, our mind become emotional, and you see they forget sense of the reason, sense of logic, then at that time very difficult to think, you see, these logics or these reasons. So the other people, many troubled area, Now, what really happening is the due to some how to say, I think due to many factors, not necessarily the factor which developed immediately, but some through many decades, there's a certain factor, certain causes and conditions. Moved year by year, decade by decade, and then due to certain immediate causes and conditions, then things become exploited. Things are exploded. Then I think in these areas the key peoples as mind become their emotion is just so exploded. Right. Their emotion is outburst. Now out of control. So you see, now that's a problem. So that's the problem. So they simply cannot see the reality and cannot think logically. So that's a problem. So once the human mind totally dominated by emotion, negative emotion, then very difficult.
Maybe it is now normal for us, generic within man's own nature, to be violent, and not a quality that humankind has as yet outgrown. I mean, here we are in 1995. This country's at war, as too are countless others around the world, and we're only 5 years away from the millennium. And still we like to say we're civilized, and yet persist in killing our own species. Why?
Basically, I always believe basic human nature is gentleness. So therefore, so I always have hope. So in spite the cruelty or some negative event here and there, basically there is real the potential, to promote harmony, to promote human compassion. So our history, if the humanity really is cruel and some kind of aggressive, some kind of negative, then I think that today we may not need to worry about human population. I think there a lot of bloodshed, a lot of killing happen, but at the same time millions and millions of people getting care out of human compassion. So therefore, basically, I think still the forces of compassion is bigger than forces of hatred. I believe. So therefore, there is real hope. There is hope. There is potential. To utilize that positive potential, right direction. And of course, the task is not easy. It involves a lot the economy, education, and also population. Also involved. I believe we should make some kind of proceed towards there are two kinds of demilitarization, disarmament. Usually I call inner disarmament. That means that is through education, through family life, and through education in educational institution. At both sides, promote the value of human compassion, the value of genuine sense of brotherhood, sisterhood. And also, I think very, very important, our future much depend on the realization of human spirit or oneness of humanity. So, you see, they, through education, you see, try to promote human affection, spirit of harmony, and you see, they obviously through education or through these also they realization or awareness, you see, you can reduce hatred. Where you see the harmony necessary, where the human affection is, you see, the useful or what say the necessary, you see the hatred, no room to play there. Just throughout, no play. I said that's all right. No role. So is it through education we can disarm, inner disarmament. That is to say, very important. Then meantime, external disarmament. Through education, we can change human society, human thinking. And that, of course, the 100%, we cannot control human negative emotion, 100%. So, you see, the external disarmament is highly necessary. So, since you see no destructive arms there, then even if one or two, you see, the emotion become out of control, he or she may indulge some violence, but the method, the instrument of destruction is limited, not available. So the destruction is much smaller.
At this time, we have an entertainment industry where human violence, war, and the like have become a principal component within what we now term as entertainment. War is in fact simply big business, so big that one wonders just how far and to what extent the media both here and abroad actually goes in order to keep lucrative TV ratings, tabloid and magazine sales rolling in. Indeed, assuming that mankind's appetite for the macabre never actually changed since the days of the Roman Colosseum, one still is faced with the question of the media's responsibility in the promotion of peace, and how the idea of inner disarmament could ever truly find favor with them when faced with the losing of such huge revenues.
But generally, as I mentioned before, in order to achieve inner disarmament as well as external disarmament, media have great important role. So as I mentioned it before, the media, the newspapers or televisions, when there's some violent or some negative things, negative event is reported, because in deep down, the people get some kind of surprise or shock. So you see that become really news. Some good things is reported, then people, oh, this is boring. Boring, Mare. Boring. So once the news is reported, all these negative things, they not much report about these positive things. Then eventually, in the people's mind, then you see feeding, through this information, then you see getting the belief, oh, human basic nature is negative. No hope now. So you see and also to children, a lot of violent, what do you call it, information, entertainment. Then eventually, you see, the violence becomes something very normal. So these are very, I think this long run, something like self-ruin or self-destruction. So the media have great role in the promotion of peace and harmony.
In spite of the fact that the basic fundamentals to life remain more or less the same everywhere for humankind, one might assume logically that this difference between race, creed, religion, and cultures would lead to a variety of diverse and enriching exchanges. In fact, as the testimony of history demonstrates again and again, division, separatism, and wars seem to always predominate, particularly amongst the leading nations, whose attitudes indicate a strong belief to their own centrality in the world. In like fashion as the Chinese occupation of the Tibetan high plateau seemed to spell almost certain disaster for the future survival of the Tibetan people, I asked this Nobel Peace Prize winner what steps he would advocate that might lessen the effect behind this ancient idea that supports the belief that one race is in some way more important, superior, or of greater value than another.
But through communication, the better understanding, awareness, deeper awareness about your neighbor, about the world, then that kind of a concept can change. Now, for example, it's my own experience. When we were in Tibet, without much contact with others, then of course we had this belief that our culture, our religion is best. And eventually our race, our nation also is the best. That kind of attitude, of course, naturally, due to lack of communication, lack of understanding, such things happen. You know, in the past, I think every nation traditionally have some kind of the spirit or some kind of feeling, believe. You see, their nation is the center of the world, and culture, everything is something center. That obviously is due to lack of knowledge, awareness, ignorance, due to ignorance. So through here you see media already is, I think, done a lot of a lot of contribution. Now one little bit the complicated thing is promote the oneness of humanity, the spirit of oneness of humanity, promotion. And meanwhile, preserve individual identity. This is a little bit a complication. Actually, my own experience. Now, one way, I always believe humanity is same. Entire humanity, entire 5 billions, 5.7 billions of humanity, we are same. We cannot escape from this as a humanity, from this planet. Meantime, I also carrying struggle for preservation of Tibetan identity, Tibetan culture. Now my own excuse is today my nation actually is facing a threat of extinction. If I think things are really normal, then I think worthwhile to think some of your particular identity, particular including language, in order to serve humanity, in order to preserve the best interest for humanity. Some individuals, some unique case, eventually may have sacrifice, but worthwhile. But generally, we can keep our individual identity. Meantime, to promote the oneness of humanity. As I make example, like one family. Each the family member, there's a different dress, there's a different the taste of songs or things like that, including religion, but at the same time, can sustain and can promote the spirit of one family.
As the impact of these words began to sink in, I started to see the paradoxical joke within our own human nature. On the one hand, we have racism, hatred, the devastations of war. Yet as one wanders through Serbia's capital, one finds enough evidence, and actually the reverse also holds true. Fully functioning mosque, road signs to Zagreb that no one yet had the heart to remove. But still I wondered how this idealistic inner disarmament theory might actually take effect, while Serbs, Croats, and Muslims were still at each other's throats.
You know, as I already mentioned, if you see there is a possibility, is at least you see to cool down through ceasefire or something, then the human, especially those concerned, you see, people's mind become, as I say, more normal. Then I think that's real time, is to appeal. If you feel, I already see, received some invitation. At the moment, I really feel, what I can do? I don't know. My appeal, I don't know. Any effect on their mind, I don't know. So in future, when you see things a little, as I say, more calm, about to start to utilize human intelligence, human normal, you see, thinking, that is the time. Then if, you see, if I'm in the appropriate, I really see want or it is my responsibility or my duty is to appeal. At the moment, you see, I think the more UN soldier, I think more effective than just this appeal. So I really don't know.
It is hard to imagine anyone not being won over by both the sincerity and humbleness of the Dalai Lama, yet I had to admit suffering from sporadic attacks of Western cynicism over his ideas of inner and outer disarmament. Yet I asked myself, had any other social or political change ever resulted in permanently turning us away from man's own inhumanity towards mankind? And was not the Dalai Lama's overall message the very same message that the Christ, Buddha, Muhammad, Mahatma Gandhi also delivered? Are not these same simple ideas the Messiah we've all been searching for? Or do we end up just watching another crucifixion? For me, the answer lay in the words of His Holiness himself.
We have to make attempt. Even if it's a true attempt, even fail or failure, doesn't matter. You made every attempt, then fail. Okay. But if we, you see, right from the beginning, saw, you see, the difficulties, see the difficulties, then just, you see, give up, make attempt. That's, I think, the real failure, real failure.